Good afternoon. So, on behalf of Aeris family, I extend a warm welcome to Dr. Ashwini Kumar at Aeris. I hope you had a pleasant stay here. And Dr. Ashwini Kumar is working as a principal scientist in Geological Oceanography Division at CSIR-National Institute of Oceanography, Goa. Dr. Kumar graduated from Nagpur University in 2002 and earned his master degree in physical chemistry from the same institution in 2004. After completing his master degree, he joined PRL as a PhD student and completed his doctoral degree in 2010. After completing his PhD, he worked as a postdoctoral research scholar at Chemistry Department of Max Planck Institute of Chemistry in Germany in 2011 to 2014. And he served as DST Inspire faculty at CSR National Institute of Oceanography, Goa. In year 2017, Dr. Kumar was appointed as a senior scientist at the same institute, and currently he is working as a lead scientist there. Presently, he is working as a principal scientist there. His main research interest is atmospheric transport and nutrient input and trace metals of the surface ocean, atmospheric dust characterization, and ion biogeochemistry. He has published around more than 40 papers in peer-reviewed journals. And today he will talk about the distribution of macro and micronutrients over the northern Indian Ocean, source and seasonal variability there. So once again, I welcome to Dr. Ashwini and invite him for to deliver a talk. So, Dr. Ashwini.
Yeah, thank you, Damka ji, for the kind introduction. And I must, at the outset, I must thank director of this organization for giving me an opportunity to talk about the work we are doing at CSIR National Institute of Oceanography. So it's a part of uh, this laboratory. Actually, CSIR stands for Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. So it's a agency under the Ministry of Home, MHRD, and it has around 37 labs spread all across the country. So one of the lab which is located in the Dona, Paula at Goa, which deals about the various aspects of the oceanography, which includes biological oceanography, chemical oceanography, geological oceanography, physical oceanography. And we are trying to understand the role of ocean in the climate. So this is the whole idea of this lab. So as you know, the oceans are not a decoupled, it's not a isolated system, it's a coupled system where atmosphere has a role to play. So in that context, I am basically dealing with some of the aspect related to the atmosphere. So as Dr. Dumka mentioned that I'm going to talk about distribution of micro and macro, but I think he missed this because I have not given this aeolian. So I have added just now this aeolian because the source of micro and macronutrients are not only from aeolian, but there are other sources. But I will be focusing mostly on the atmospheric or aeolian aspect. And I will be focused on the North Indian Ocean, particularly looking or talking about the sources and its seasonal variability. So, I mean, I don't know the kind of audience I have because I believe that most of these people are from the astronomy, astrophysics, but for them, uh, it is very important to emphasize here for me that these are the important aspect which we typically study in the atmospheric and climate science, because these are the some of the parameter where there is a lot of uncertainty, and because of those uncertainty, there is a lot of uncertainty in the climate understanding and subsequently their prediction. So how it works? Yeah, this one is followed. Or is there any keyboard or something? Okay. Okay. So this is a very basic introduction, and this cartoon actually shows that we have aerosol. I believe most of you are aware or having some basic understanding about aerosol. Aerosol are basically small tiny particle which we cannot just see from our visible eye, but yes, they have a large impact in the climate. So typically their size ranges from few nanometer to several microns, and the major sources are typically from the continent. We have a lot of dust emissions, a lot of pollutants, anthropogenic emissions, and then we have also a natural major source is from the sea surface, which are typically called sea salts. So we have emission from dust, we have emissions from anthropogenic pollutions, and then they, depending upon various conditions and scenarios, they undergo transport, because once they get emitted, get into the atmosphere, it get transported to the receptor. Either they can just fall down there because of depending upon the kind of size or the weight of that particle, or they may undergo a transport process. And during the transport process, what happens? There is a lot of processing happen, physical as well as chemical processing. Physical, I mean to say that when the particle get emitted, it may emit from here, but on the way, depending upon its size, shape, and everything, it may get deposited somewhere far away from the source region, but certainly over the continent. But if and the chemical, I mean to say, they interact with other gaseous phase species like secondary aerosols, SOx, NOx, lot of acidic species coming from the anthropogenic as well as the biogenic emissions, and they become a different kind of species. When they are released, it's mostly pristine, it's a pure one. But the moment it undergo transport, it get transformed. So this is called chemical transformation. And this transformation actually leads to a totally different kind of species, which we also call processed dust, or you can say processed aerosols. And the good thing about this, or I will say good or bad, I don't know. I mean, it depends upon several other aspects. So these processed dust actually provide a lot of labile and bioavailable. Labile, I mean to say easily available or easily soluble. Because if you talk about pure dust, it is in the crystal lattice. It does not there is a lot of trace metal or other elements which are in a very crystal lattice. You cannot just take the material out. But the moment it gets processed, it's relatively easy to get those materials out, and that's why we call it labile or bioavailable. Bioavailable, I mean to say, for any phytoplankton or biology to grow here in the surface water, they need nutrients. Nutrients are here macro as well as micro. I will not go into the detail of this macro and micro. While I will be going through my slides, I will tell you more on this aspect. Now, once they get deposited, they can contribute to the surface water. Typically, they increase the phytoplankton productivity, which are enabled to sequester a lot of carbon dioxide. It's a kind of circle where you actually release a lot of carbon dioxide, but then at the same time you sequester a lot of carbon dioxide. So in our particular research in the oceanography, we typically focus on this aspect of deposition, how much it is important, what are the factors, because the productivity also depends on what kind of dust we are talking about. What is their sources? Is it enriched in some particular nutrient? Is it limited by some particular nutrient? So those aspects we try to understand, and then because these information is quite important to go into some of the biogeochemical models, which typically help us to understand more about the climate. So I will be focusing mostly on the North Indian Ocean. So what is North Indian Ocean? Typically, it is like 0 degree, the equator. Above that, it is termed as North Indian Ocean. And we have two constituents, Bay of Bengal in the eastern part of India, and then we have a Arabian Sea in the western part of India. And whenever we talk about the nutrient biogeochemistry, I mean to say that how the nutrients impact the biogeochemical process, which involves biology, geological process, as well as chemical process. So when we talk about the nutrients, there are that is driven by several surface water processes, because the productivity of the ocean is typically in the photic zone. Photic zone where till the zone where the light can penetrate. Okay, so it is typically ranges from 40 to 70 meters, and this is called surface water, and then surface water and lower ocean. So what is in the lower ocean? Typically troposphere, or I will say whatever the atmospheric portion below 1 kilometer. Okay, So those are called surface ocean lower atmospheric processes, and that surface ocean lower atmospheric process impact the nutrient biogeochemistry. So this is one review article we have been working on, and where we have talked about this is kind of review article. If people are interested, they can just go through it. And we have analyzed the recent studies, or let us say past 1 decade study, and we have tried to evaluate what is our current understanding, what are the knowledge gaps, and what should we do to further understand these surface ocean lower atmospheric processes with a focus on the Indian Ocean. So, but I will so this is the diagram we have actually made here, and you can see how dynamic the processes are here. You have Bay of Bengal, there are various things. There is denitrification, there is oxygen minimum zone, there is ASC exchange going on, there is a trace gas emissions, there are again oxygen minimum zone, then so denitrification, lot of things are going, upwelling processes there. So it's not a one process or two processes. It's a interaction of several processes going on. Yeah. There are a lot of biogenic emissions from the ocean. Yes. There is a denitrification. There is a lot of things going on. You have to understand the nitrogen cycling in the ocean. There you will understand about this. Whenever there is a nitrogen fixation, from the nitrogen there are a lot of phytoplankton, lot of things going on. So they take the nitrogen, and while recycling it, they also emit the nitrogen, depending upon what kind of condition. Is it reducing condition? It is oxidizing condition, and that's where the role of this oxygen minimum zone comes into picture, because sometimes the oxygen levels are at sub-nanomolar level. So there it's already reducing phase. So that time there is a denitrification. So those things impact the emission also. So yes. Yes, so that's where the aeolian nutrients come into the picture. They are reactive nitrogen. I will come into those things in my later slide. So if you talk about, again, I have just highlighted here some of the important processes which actually governs or dictates the nutrient circulation or nutrient biogeochemistry. If you talk about Bay of Bengal, there is a lot of riverine flux coming from the Indian subcontinent. Then there is a, because of the influx of fresh water, there is a strong stratification. I mean to say, if there is a fresh water supply and there is a sea water here, there is a strong density gradient, because when you put a lot of fresh water, what happens? The density of this sea water decreases, and because of this density, the mixing is not happening. So because of less mixing, the nutrients staying in the lower depth, they cannot come up. So that supply source of those nutrients got completely blocked. So there is a strong stratification. Then there are a lot of cyclonic activity. So whenever there is a cyclonic activity, it actually churns the deeper water and brings it to the top water. So that also brings a lot of nutrient. Okay, and then there are also aspects of seasonal and weak OMG. I'm not going to detail. If you go in the Arabian Sea, there is a upwelling, which is a seasonal phenomena. Upwelling means to say there is a deep water which is coming on the top of water because of the wind stress and other things. Then there is a convective mixing, coastal anoxia, again riverine flux and seasonal. These are some of the aspects which actually drives. But apart from this, there are other aspects, which is dust deposition and anthropogenic aerosol deposition in both regions, and it is basically due to the because this particular region is surrounded by land, and particularly this land which has a large anthropogenic emission. And then we also have a lot of desert area. If you look at the Middle East region, then if you look at the Northeast Africa, so these are the lands. So this is a very unique basin where you have a strong source of anthropogenic emission as well as the natural emission, for example, dust. So, and most of this deposition depends upon the wind stress, wind vector. So the meteorology is an important driving factor, and this is clearly showing a seasonal reversal. During southwest monsoon, you have all the winds which is carrying a lot of dust to the Arabian Sea as well as Bay of Bengal. But if you talk about the northeast monsoon, it's mostly the continental parcel which is coming all the way to the both basin. So the seasonal difference, with that's what I'm saying, that this seasonal difference is there and it's very significant, and because of that the abundance and the biogeochemistry has go totally different in these two basins. So again, if you talk about the continental load, you know, summer is mostly it's dust. I think it's a typical picture of aerosol optical depth, and in winter it is the anthropogenic emission, because here the dust emissions are typically less and here the dust emission is more strong. And if you look in a larger or global context, I will say, you see now you look at the numbers, you have strong dust source from the Saharan, you have strong source from the Chinese desert, and if you look at the numbers, emission numbers, it's almost 1150 metric ton and 600 metric ton. And if you look at their transport and look at the deposition flux, it's 70 and 200 metric ton. But if you focus here in this, there are very small sources, although compared to these two, they are very small sources. But if you look at the sorry. From the Saharan or other but influence from the Arabian or yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to convey here, that despite of the fact that there is a large emissions from these two regions, if you look at the deposition flux, it's somewhere in between this Indian Ocean, and where the sources, these sources are not so strong emission sources as compared to the Gobi and the Saharan desert. That's make this region further unique, that we have such a strong source here, and they didn't give much to this Atlantic and Pacific, but from the from the Arabian Sea or this is for the North Indian Ocean basically, and you have a large dust coming all the way here. So that makes this further unique, because and then we have anthropogenic sources. So it's a region where you have a strong supply of both anthropogenic as well as the natural dust. That's what I'm trying to emphasize here. Yeah. So I'm here focusing on the ocean. I'm not talking about the Himalaya. That I will maybe in the last slides I will talk about those aspects. Actually, this I have published in this review paper, and if you look at the 2011 paper by that's in aeolian research, Yu et al. Yu et al. So they have produced this picture based on several inventories, right? I mean, yes. I don't know exactly, but it's Yu et al. You can look into it. Yu et al. So there is a table where they talked about several inventories, and certainly these numbers are not absolute. There is a lot of uncertainty associated. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So then, so some of the work we have also done, where we try to quantify the dust contribution, and I will not go into the detail, but some interesting result is that what we observed, that Arabian Peninsula is typically a dominant dust compared to Thar Desert. And Thar Desert, I mean, certainly for Bay of Bengal the picture is different, which I am not showing here, but for the Arabian Sea, it's mostly Arabian Peninsula. I have another picture which I'm not showing. This is just for an example, that these are the different sources which actually contribute to the Arabian Sea, and we can quantify. So basically, the overall picture, what I'm trying to okay. So yeah, if you there is a number called epsilon ND, and there is a number called 87 by 86 strontium. So these are all both radiogenic isotopes. So epsilon ND is basically a ratio between 143 neodymium by 147 neodymium. Okay, and then we make some number by making it like 10 in the 10 tens to power fourth decimal place, there is a difference. So this number is typically defined that way, and what we see is that what are their characteristic signature, and we have end members which has their characteristics number defined, and then we do the end member mixing modeling. This is a kind of one end member mixing modeling, and then from this end member, what is the contribution if they are falling in this? If you see the numbers, there are some numbers. So if a point fall somewhere here, it's 80% contribution from Arabian Peninsula and 20 from the Thar Desert. If it is falling in this line, this is the way you try to interpret the source identification. Yes. Yes. So this is the source ratio, and this is source ratio. This is source ratio. You can see the shaded region. So basically, this point is the mean, and this is the spread. Okay, and based on that, we try to do the end member mixing. And end member mixing, because we have an ideal source here, which has this number, and we have an ideal source here, and these are the fractional contribution from both sources, and if the data fall on this line, it may be the mixing of these two sources. And if the data does not fall in this line, for example, you see some of the points are outlier from this line, which suggests that these are also affected by different sources. So we have to put multiple sources to identify their contribution. Okay, you want to go into geochemistry because it will take a lot of time. No, this is geochemical compound. This is isotopic. Yeah. Yeah, because these isotopes are very conservative tracers. Conservative, I mean to say, yeah. So conservative, I mean to say that if this particular source has X signature, that remain X throughout its transport. Okay. But if you talk about chemical composition, if you see the nitrate composition, the nitrate may vary because it can undergo chemical transformation. Okay. So now what we have tried to do is we try to give a signature to this particular source, because and this signature will not change irrespective wherever it goes. But listen, but if it mixes with another dust particle, because we are not talking about a single dust particle, we are talking about a mixture of homogeneous mixture of dust particles. Now this particle which I am getting, let us say Goa, it has a contribution from different dust sources. Okay. Now if it is coming from, if it is a mixture of, let us say, Arabian Peninsula and Thar, what is their relative contribution? So to understand that, we try to put in this mixing model, and that's why it fall in this mixing model. This is the reason behind. Okay. So what do you expect? If you say, ha, so we have to do some background work, na? Here is the background work. So what are the potential sources? Then we try to find out. For example, I am collecting a sample here. What could be the potential sources? It cannot be Siberian desert, correct? Correct. It cannot be the Mauritania or West Africa, correct? So we have to identify the potential sources. This is one thing. Second thing, we have to actually see some of the other proxies, like back trajectory, like Calypso data. If you find back trajectory at this region only coming from this region, we expect that most of the signature will be here. But on the way, if there is a plume which is mixing here, Arabian Peninsula, you cannot say now. It's a mixing, correct? When it is reaching Goa. So you may find based on air mass back trajectory, you can say, but then we can question this, whether it is really pure Thar desert. And we see the signature, and we found out that 20% is from Arabian Peninsula. So say that there is some other process or other emissions or other factors which is mixing with this. Mm-hmm. It's so all the soil formation or surface sediment forms with a different geochemical process. Yeah. Because these are formed at different time scale, different weathering process, different physical weathering process. So their geochemical signature will be different. Otherwise, all over Earth, we have one kind of dust. We do not have. It's a very simple thing. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So no, I have to then need some more time because this discussion has taken like 10 minutes. So I will extend for 10 minutes. Okay. So yeah. So as I was mentioning, these are the potential sources. I will just skip this, and then I will little bit go more into detail of about why we need these. So I think there are a lot of literature work which talks about the dust impact. For example, here is one paper in GRL which talks about the summer monsoon primary production is controlled by the dust deposition. Then we have another, winter monsoon, there are dust-induced episodic phytoplankton blooms. So from the biological productivity point of view, these inputs are quite important. Again, we have another interesting paper where we talk about the multiple sources, and it has been said that half of the iron is coming from the aeolian sources. So, and then inspired with this, these observations, we have also collaborated with a biological oceanographer, Dr. Hemanti Biswas, and what we have tried to do in our lab, we try to do some simulation experiment where we have used some real-time atmospheric dust sample, and under some future climate scenario at elevated CO2 condition, we have done a microcosm approach. Microcosm, I mean to say, it's a kind of small isolated system taken from the ocean, and we try to add depending on what factors we are trying to understand or what processes we are trying to understand. And here we basically focused on the dust addition, or I will say aerosol addition, with a different dust and anthropogenic contributions, and we try to see how the phytoplanktons have behaved, and we see a lot of significant changes. And this is what we have done. I will not go again into the detail of experiment, but what I am trying to highlight here, I will again not go into the detail because it's a very complicated where phytoplanktons are increasing, decreasing. But if you look at the blue ones only, rather just blue ones, the blue ones are representing ambient CO2, which is the current 420 ppm, and we have one type of dust, and ambient CO2 where we have another type of dust. Now, if you see that because of different dust composition, if you look at the Y scale, it's the cell count, cell density basically, and you see from the ambient condition it has increased with different dust condition, and the increase are not very conservative. I mean, there is sometimes you see high increase, sometimes you see very low increase. So it clearly suggests the different dust composition impact very differently to the phytoplankton growth. Again, if you look at the species we are talking about, micro, nano and pico, you can see the kind of differences. It's here it may be same, but here you can see there is a slightly more increase, and then we also observe that from the initial it has decreased. So very briefly, there is a in general enhancement in the cell density because of the atmospheric mineral dust addition, and also there is an increase in chlorophyll in shelf water, and also we have observed some micro compared to nano and pico. So there are a lot of physico-chemical interpretation which goes into understanding, but the idea is that we have dust and we have a mixture of anthropogenic as well as mineral dust, which is actually impacting the surface water processes. So with this thing, I think there is almost a very negligible study considering the fact that it is quite important. If you look into the literature, there are a few very historic studies, and during Jacobs and other period, and then there are some studies when I was doing my PhD. But if you look at the overall picture from the Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal, hardly there are studies reported, and there is a reason for this, because you have very easily do the work here rather than doing work here. This is the limitation, because you have to go all the way in the ocean. It's a quite expensive job. I mean, and in that context, I am very lucky to be a part of this oceanography organization, where I get an opportunity to go on board on the ship vessels. And Okay, I will not go into this CIOB aspect. And here are the two major warriors which actually help us, because without this we cannot do anything. I mean, if you want to really talk about marine aerosol, marine dust, or biogenic emissions, these without without a vessel, research vessel, which is floating, or we also call it floating laboratory, without this we cannot do. And luckily we have this Sindhu Sadhana, which is like 80 meter for the longer cruises, and we have a Sindhu Sankalp, which is 56 meter, and which is mostly for the coastal cruises. Now, as I mentioned, there is a large gap since like I can 2 decades back, there are some studies where we have ICAB and other stuff, and then we have now some data coming out, and this large gap is because of there is no oceanographic expedition and expensive. So I just give you a number that to maintain this ship, we are paying like 25 lakhs per day, even if it is running or not running, irrespective of that. So for a expedition like 30 days expedition, which is very essential from the atmospheric point of view, we have to pay like 7 to 8 crores, and that kind of funding, I think these days no funding agency gives. So we have to depend on our institutional funding, and that's where the beauty of all this data, because without that it is not possible. And typically there is no atmospheric focused sampling. So what I used to do go with biological oceanographer, geological oceanographer, because they have some funding from private agencies, and there we got support, and that's why I have collected samples. So here I'm just showing the work we have done since 2015, and we have somewhere around 8 to 10 cruises, covering all the Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal, whenever we got an opportunity. And we also covered some of the aspect in the Indian Ocean, Central Indian Ocean basin. So I will not focus on these results. Rather, I will try to squeeze the data or maybe the results from these two region, and because each cruise has its own story. I mean, each cruise can have 4 or 5 stories different, and we can publish like anything. But what I have tried to do here, I have tried to give an overall holistic view that what these data at present talk about. Yes, that is the ship we are using. That can go all the way minus 12 or 10. Minus 14 actually, minus 13 degrees out. Here actually we have a different project. We have a polymetallic nodule project, which is like a international seabed authority, and India has some kind of contract where we try to mine our aim is to mine the polymetallic nodules, and we do a lot of experiment. But while going, I get an opportunity of like 10 days selling time, so I can collect the samples. So this is where I am trying to capitalize the things. Okay, so I will also briefly talk about the work the analytical tools we are using. So we collect sample. These are the typical high volume sampler we collect. We have this kind of sheet, and then we take a piece of this sheet, and we do both leaching. I mean to say just dissolving in the deionized water, and then we also do clean lab work by doing complete digestion. And these are technical things. I don't want to go into the detail. And then we do a lot of trace metal analysis, total trace metal using ICP-MS. Then we also do ion composition using ion chromatography. We also do soluble trace metal. These are low in concentration. We have to go for high resolution ICP-MS. And then we also do total nitrogen water. So whatever you will say 90% of the work we do using our inbuilt facility. And we also collaborate with PRL for this ECOC and other stuff. No. It is all offline, because ship, you cannot process it. It's very... Okay. So this is, I think, from an oceanic region, and this is 16 hours. Yeah. So it's probably I don't remember because this is what I mean. Whenever I think in Bay of Bengal, you will find much more darker color. Bay of Bengal. If you look at the Bay of Bengal sample, they are further darker. Even they are very poor actually. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. There is a lot of biomass and all those stuff coming. So I have just squeezed all the results and I don't want to go into the details, but one feature I would like to highlight here, if you look at the monsoon sample, let us say August and this value August and December sample, you will see high bars in the winter sample and lower bars in the monsoon or other season. So that give a clear indication that winter is having a highest concentration of macronutrient. Macronutrient, I am talking about mostly ammonia and nitrate, and we also call it as a reactive nitrogen. Another important thing, and similar picture you will find in the Bay of Bengal. This is Bay of Bengal, this is Arabian Sea, and this is what we have done in the coastal sample. So I will not discuss more of the result. Another interesting aspect which you will find, if you focus on the Y scale, ammonium scale and its nitrate scale, this scale talks about microgram per meter square per day, and this is milligram per meter square. So you can make it easily that these are in several hundreds of milligram microgram compared to ammonia. So nitrate is one of the dominant reactive nitrogen species, and that is because also we have a lot of dust. A lot of dust, and dust actually are reactive with the nitrate more compared to the ammonia. This is one of the reason whenever dust transport happens, you have a lot of nitrate composition. And yeah, okay. When we talk about the micronutrients, again we try to because there are like whole set of transitional element which is important and essential for as a limiting nutrient, and we cannot just although we have done, but it's kind of very difficult to look into data and try to understand more into that. We are still in the direction to understanding the different aspect of trace elements. But when my student Prem Piyush Panda, who was doing his thesis, I asked him a question that I will give you all the data, but what exactly you are trying to focus? I mean, which elements you will focusing? And that's a very important question when you defend your viva, because why only this element? Why not this element? This is the question was asked. So he came up with this table, and then he told, sir, I will try to look on those elements which are more crucial or relatively more important for all the biogeochemical processes. And then he got this review paper, and here he found out that these carbon fixation, nitrogen fixation, denitrification, nitrification, methane oxidation, all these, if you look at the trace metals, iron, manganese, copper are the dominant. So then he told that, sir, I am going to do iron, copper, and manganese. We can do rest of the element at later stage, but iron, copper, and manganese, and that's the plot, and that's the slide he showed in his defense. So reviewers were convinced. So, and also we have done some, see, we do a lot of trace metal, and trace metals are very sensitive to measure, because always there is a lot of error, there is a lot of problem with the analysis, and there's a lot of blank issues. And if you don't have a good lab, you cannot do it. It's very difficult to do. So then, and there is no international standards still available for the trace metal. You may have international standards where you can run the sample, run the standard, and then you can compare that how your standards are, and you can just make a comparison. But we don't have. But still, we have a standard which is called Arizona test dust, which is now relatively is getting accepted from all the atmospheric laboratory or trace metal community. And we have done, and there is a data published, and then we have made our comparison, and there were, with reference to the previous published data, they were relatively looks better. And okay, I must thank this guy who has actually provided this ATD, because it's not available nowadays, but only it is available with this guy. And also we have done some comparative studies. We have intercalibration, so not comparative, but intercalibration study, where we got samples from some lab, and they have given without giving us any number, and just say that process and submit the result. And we have done so, and then we have some intercalibration with a Chinese group, And one more intercollaboration where 6 labs are involved, it's still going on. We have got very interesting results, and that gives us more confidence that the analytical protocol we are using are actually of a international standard. Okay, so coming to the results, so this is the typical where I am going to present some monsoon and winter result, because they are drastically different, and you can easily see the red ones which are typically monsoon winds, and then you have a green ones which is typically the winter, and you can see, you can make it out very clearly. The winter it is mostly continental, and it's in the wind monsoon it's mostly ocean based. But then you cannot neglect the desert, because there is a lot of emissions also going on. Although the monsoon winds are like this, because these are all back trajectory, not the general climatology. And there is a lot of emission also, so there are some episodic winds which can also bring a lot of dust here. So there will be a mixing of all the sea salts and dust and a lot of things. So this is the result, a box plot where we talk about dust. Dust is basically calculated from the aluminum concentration using this formula. This is the upper continental crust concentration. Based on this, we calculated the dust, and then we have also plotted total iron, manganese, and copper. And if you look at the distribution, monsoon is high and then it decreases. And of course, we have done the size segregated, so it will be less in this. Almost similar pattern is shown by the iron and manganese, but if you look at the copper, it is slightly reversed, because it is mostly derived from the anthropogenic. So it's a very general, it's not very great result. It's a result which is actually just a basic understanding. But if you look at the soluble fraction, so I'm talking about soluble part, which is more important. Okay, so if you look at it's kind of reverse. If you look at previously, it was this way, but if you look at the soluble part, it is this way. It is this way. You just don't look at the 2.5. It's altogether different interpretation. But if you compare the PM10 from monsoon and winter, the soluble fraction has significantly increased with a large variability. That is again important. See, in the manganese, again, more or less same. It's not because of several other reasons. There are some another kind of dust source which is actually contributing, that brings a lot of manganese. Again, copper, it's more or less same whatever we have seen, and that will impact the percentage solubility. And why percentage solubility is important? Because this is the parameter. Actually, it goes into global biogeochemical modeling, because the modelers are looking for what is the relative or percentage solubility from different regions, particularly if we are talking about Indian Ocean. So again, this is something which I don't want to go, but what we are trying to do here is that we try to understand the factors, the dominant factors which are contributing to this percentage solubility. So I will just screen this copper and manganese, because again I have to take like half an hour to explain this slide. I will ask you to, I request you to kindly focus on this plot where we have done like solubility versus total iron, and then solubility versus the total acid. Total acid is basically defined by the nitrate and sulfate values, and if you look at the global picture of this iron solubility thing, what you will find is some kind of hyperbolic mixing of hyperbolic kind of curve between the total iron and percentage solubility. And this curve actually tells us there is one end member which has higher iron but lower solubility, and there is another end member which has a lower iron and higher solubility. So we have one source which is dominated with dust, but the solubility is less, and then we have one source which has very high solubility but dust is very low. And what we observe from our data, that if you look at that typically 2.5 and PM10, it shows some kind of hyperbolic mixing, but there are some green points which is winter coarse material. They deviate from this kind of hyperbolic mixing. You can see that if they are following this mixing curve, they will be all falling here, which suggests it is getting slightly away from this curve. So So this particular hyperbolic mixing is explained as there is a source which is actually controlling the solubility. But then why there is a deviation from this curve, and we try to explain this based on this. And if you look at the total acid, it follows some kind of correlation between the percentage solubility, which suggests that some kind of processing, actually the acidic processing, which contribute to this iron solubility. So we actually argued that it may be because of one emission source and then chemical processing. These two are the important factor which contribute to the iron solubility. Again, if you ask me this question, which is dominant and what is the relative contribution, it cannot be explained based on this plot. You need to go for some other proxies like isotopes to relatively make sure that this is dominant or this is dominant. But this is what the picture is, that in the Arabian Sea, during different seasons, these are the factors which actually control the iron solubility. Coming to the Bay of Bengal, again, these are the, sorry. Yeah. So we have something like 3 cruises here, the inter-monsoon or post-monsoon, then we have winter and then monsoon. And you find all sort of, because Bay of Bengal also receives from this region, from this region, you may find all sort of mixing air mass back trajectory. Now we look into the numbers compared to the Arabian Sea, where the Arabian Sea, the monsoon was dominated by dust and winter was relatively low. It is a different picture. You have a monsoon low dust, and then we have a higher dust during the winter. And similar pattern is followed by iron, more or less similar, with a large uncertainty in manganese because of some other geochemical factor. And then copper is more or less, same. If you look into the solubility aspect, again, you see different picture compared to the Arabian Sea. It's little bit reversed, more or less this. Iron solubility more or less similar, and manganese is also similar. So I'm not going to detail of manganese and copper, because we have to really understand that, because there are some sources of Arabian Peninsula which actually has a different kind of manganese enriched minerals, which actually are very labile in nature. They are mostly in the carbonate phase, and that is actually impacting during post monsoon, which brings this manganese numbers very high. Okay, coming to this factors. So no, not factor, rather we will just focus on this distribution. And if you look again this picture, you will not find that kind of nice hyperbolic mixing. Rather, you will find most of the data are away from this hyperbolic mixing. So there are other several factors which is contributing, and then when we plotted it with a total acid, as well as we also looked into the non-sea salt potassium, which is coming from biomass burning. So we did find some kind of correlation between this, and then we can say that other than this emission and chemical, there is a contribution of biomass burning also when we talk about Bay of Bengal. So this is something very interesting. So if you compare with the flux data, I will not go into detail. What I am trying to say here is that if you look at the numbers compared to Atlantic and Pacific, these numbers are quite high. If you talk about the dust type deposition, it is somewhere in the 20s of milligrams per meter square per day. But if you talk about Atlantic and Pacific, the numbers are like 4 or 5 milligrams per meter square per day. So this is very high. And if you have also compared with the ICARB data, and well, I cannot say very conclusively, but it has increased probably. So I don't know the reason. It may be because of episodic sampling. Sorry. Because in monsoons there is a lot of supply from the Arabia and other desert region. So, and just summer is there. See, if you talk about summer in the Middle East, it goes all the way up to August end. When we talk about our Indian region, so there is a lot of emissions going on. There is a lot of dust activity in the yeah, ICARB summer is like April, March, April. Yeah. Monsoon, here I am talking about August. So August. Yeah, that's why I'm saying that these are collected over the Arabian Sea, and in the Arabian Peninsula, a lot of dust activity is going on, which is already contributing to the Arabian Sea fluxes. So we have a high deposition flux in the August. This is like 25 days in SSD 15. That was in August 2017. And then it's an average of 2 months actually. 25 days in August 2017 and almost 30 days in August 2018. So around 27 samples probably. And then I think this one is an average of some. No. It was only 30 days. Yeah, there were 2 lakes, ICARP 1 and ICARP 2. Sorry, ICARP 1 has 2 lakes, one in the Bay of Bengal and one in the. So that started in March, ended in somewhere in the 8th of April, and 8th of April till maybe I don't remember exact the date, but it was April sample. This one. Okay. So this is what I am trying to emphasize. Similar picture with the Bay of Bengal. So yeah, so I think this some of the work is published here, and so now in the next slide, what I am trying to highlight here that considering some calculation and something, how they are impacting the biogeochemistry. That is the aspect, because we have n number of flux, n number of these things going on, but ideally how much it is impacting, and then we made some kind of empirical calculation where we have tried to find the carbon fixation because of iron deposition with a particular kind of iron solubility, considering the fact that this soluble iron will be taken by the diatoms. Diatoms are the dominant phytoplanktons, and it has a cellular uptake ratio of this. So considering all these factors, we tried to calculate it, and what we found is that the Arabian Sea contributes almost 10% of the global primary production. However, Bay of Bengal, the dust or iron soluble iron contributes 4% of the GPP, global primary productivity. This clearly underscores that the dust deposition or the uncertainty or the numbers for the dust deposition requires a lot of further observation, because these has, again you can see that uncertainty is more than 100% here. Okay, so that is the thing. So I will wrap it up. I will not conclude anything, rather I will just summarize whatever I have said. And as you can see, it is this deposition is significant, and the reactive nitrogen, dust and trace elements, there is a significant seasonal variability over the Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal. These emission sources and the chemical processing are probably the dominant controlling factors. However, the biomass burning is also contributing significantly to the Bay of Bengal. And then these are higher than other region, and of course they are modulating the Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal. I will also just briefly talk about my future attention. So we are trying to work more on the coastal and cruise samples, to also focusing on the Indian Ocean region to give a more better or robust seasonal distribution. Then we are trying to do some geochemical study to quantify the source based fluxes. We also are looking into the stable isotope ratio to fingerprint source and their relative contribution. Although these exercises are very expensive, but we are in the process of doing some more simulation experiment. Another aspect is aerosol pH, which we have now started working on using some thermodynamic model, and this is one of the controlling factor, because just sulfate and nitrate is not the aerosol driving the aerosol pH. Rather, there are several organic ions also. And then another aspect which we found out in recent year, there is a lot of biomass burning, white fire activities, and across the world it has been highlighted that these are activities contributing to this trace element, and which are fueling the fueling the surface water biogeochemical process. So I think this is something which I am looking forward and looking more into it. So I will just very briefly, maybe 5 minutes. I will just take 5 minutes. Huh? So very briefly, how their emissions and how they're contributing to the bioavailable, soluble, or labile, and these are different nomenclature used for different purpose. So, if you look at the carbon export efficiency, which means that the amount of carbon dioxide removed per gram of the soluble iron deposited, and if you talk about the pyrogenic sourced iron, pyrogenic I mean to say those which have undergone the combustion processes, it may be low oxygen combustion, it may be high oxygen combustion, but then it undergoes naturally under combustion process, and the iron emitted from these sources are almost 6 to 9 times higher than the pure dust source, or I will say processed dust source. Okay, so this is a cartoon which actually talks about the various combustion processes when there is a wildfire or biomass burning. So we have a zone of combustion zone when there is a vegetation burning, and so what happens during this combustion zone? What happens? There is a strong high temperature processes going on, and because of the convective updraft or because of wind stress, there is some sort of what is that? Convective updraft. Yeah, pyroconvective updraft, and it brings a lot of dust particle which is more processed, as well as a lot of direct trace metals. So this is a kind of mixture. So it's called pyroconvectively driven dust emission. And then what happens after the burning is over? There is a post-burn landscape remains, and again this is a free land. It is free land, and relatively more processed dust is available. And when there is a plume, it is a different kind of dust when we talk about the pure desert dust or chemically processed dust. And these can contribute to the photosynthesis process, or it will further accelerate the what is called biological productivity when they get transported and deposited in the ocean. So these are some of the things. And in India also, we have recently, in last 2-3 years, we have seen, particularly in the northern part of India, a lot of forest fire, a lot of biomass burning going on. So there is no number still available to quantify the trace metal, particularly trace metal contribution from these burning sources. So I think it's very important to study the IGP, focusing on these things. There are a lot of studies going on. I mean, sir was there. He know very well that there's a this what is called that when the Nainital study started with Professor Sarin, that Kriparam, yes. Yeah, land campaign and all those things. So there were a lot of emphasis at that time, the carbonaceous species, water soluble species.
December 2004.
Yes. And then there was a lot of long-term studies, like 1 or 2 years of this absorption measurement and grain. So I think it's a high time that we should also look into this, because these are some of the factors which is actually contributing to the ocean biogeochemistry. So this is how processes over the continent. That's the idea with which I started, that there are processes over the continent which can significantly contribute to the ocean biogeochemistry. So with this, I think I will stop, and I will just give an acknowledgement to all my main workforce, my PhD students and postdocs. So these 3 people have already completed. She submitted. These 2 are ongoing, and these are the postdocs. So I thank them for their hard work and the effort, because it's the kind of a teamwork. And then I also thanks my collaborators, Hemanti, Sudhir, Sachin, Valiur. Then I'm also involved with the SCORE working group RUSTED, which is actually looking into the reduced uncertainty in soluble trace element and their deposition. So this is something, a new working group has come up, and it came up with this idea that there's a lot of uncertainty with the trace metal measurements and then analytical protocol, observational studies. So we are working with this group. And then certainly the funding support from my lab, CSIR, Ministry of Earth Science, Department of Science and Technology, SCORE. So I thank them all. So with this, I stop And thanks a lot. If you have any question.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar. So now question and
Uh, as you mentioned that, a lot of dust is coming from almost all desert parts of the globe, and it is having soluble and less soluble iron also, right? So, my concern or question or query is that how does it, affect the CO2 sequestration? I mean, does it help or it, affects otherwise?
It helps on
It
because
helps.
yeah, even the small amount of contribution and see, we are talking about the readily available, immediately available. But then when the dust get deposited, it remain there. And there is a lot of other processes going on which may provide nutrients at a later stage, not immediately. But when we talk about the productivity, for example, there is a lag in the productivity. Why it happens? There is a dust storm, and after 3 days we see the phytoplankton bloom. So the response time is relatively fast.
Of course,
but
there
that,
has to be some response time.
so the response time may increase, it may impact, but those kind of quantifications are not available. But that there
So
is
for oceans, basically, it is good to
Yeah.
have a lot of
yeah,
dust,
you can say that.
right? For Himalaya, it is not.
Yeah, in a way. That's what. But at the same time, that's what in the first slide I showed you. It may be good or bad. We cannot say because it may also contain some toxicant. It's not only nutrient. Yeah. So like lead, cadmium, those are toxic elements. So that may also decrease the productivity. There is a possibility. I don't know.
any more question?
One of the factor. That is one of the factor. The geographical location, they are geographically differently located, the different source contributing to these region in a different different way, and there is a lot of, so it's not a very straightforward. I don't have a straightforward answer, but yes, geographical location, various emission sources contributing differently to the both region, various riverine fluxes. If you look at the Arabian Sea, the riverine flux are relatively low compared to the Bay of Bengal. You have a lot of flux from the Indo-Gangetic, Indus, Ganges and other thing. Irrawaddy is there contributing. So their stratification is different. So it's not very straightforward. But yes, it is not significant in the Arabian. Yeah.
I was wondering if you compared the like near coast and away coast region.
Yeah, we have done that. We have done. I'm not showing you.
How far from the coast do you see concentrations, high concentrations, basically?
I think it's difficult to say because
Most impact, like after this.
well, okay, I can give you some example. If you look at the sorry, आगे चला गया. So if you look at that is the question asked by my student also, that how to classify coastal and how to classify open ocean. So we have to come up with some number that when the concentration decrease is significant, the gradient is significant. I think that point that threshold where we should take that as a coastal, and beyond that is the ocean. This is one way of looking at it. We have that's the I mean, these are the questions which is always keep me wondering what should be the way. But whatever based on the whatever optimal numbers of sample we have, based on that we quantified, like I can give you Latland value. I don't remember exactly, but almost 30 to 50 miles away from the coast, we consider coastal. Beyond that, we consider open. That also based on the morphology of the shelf, because up to 30 miles, the depth is almost like 400, 500 meters. Beyond that, I don't know. I'm not an oceanographer, but yeah, we have used some numbers to quantify that. Yeah. ठीक है, सुन रहे हैं. So this, first of all, they, while doing the productivity, they need a lot of carbon dioxide. So they remove a lot of carbon. That's why ocean is called, buffer. It's a sink and it's a buffer which actually regulate the, large amount of CO2 emission from anthropogenic. It has also certain limit. But in the past, if you go into the back, there have been activities where we have a lot of, glacial, interglacial events where there is a lot of dust. And what happened, because of more aridity, there is a lot exposure of the land, lot of dust get transported, and then CO2 has gone very low, so that the whole earth was, that average temperature was very low. So those kind of thing is there. But apart from that, if you talk about the current scenario, not only CO2, there is another aspect like, nitrification. You remove a lot of nitrogen, then because of lot of removal, you need a lot of oxygen to, burn it for the production. So that leads to the oxygen minimum zone. And the oxygen minimum zone is a kind of very different, unique environment. There is a lot of activities going on. Because of that, there is a denitrification. There is in the denitrification process, what happens? There is a NOx emission. There is a methane emission, because that's a reducing environment. So what happened? All these methane and these are also equally greenhouse gas effect, which have with a large, potential, greenhouse warming potential. So that is something which is important. But again, I am not an expert in this, but these are some of the potential impact. Really, thank you.